Greetings. I am Legacy Moon, and this is True Crime and Mysteries. First, I'd like to welcome all of you who are here, especially if you're here for the very first time. Welcome back to all of my current subscribers, and welcome to those of you who haven't yet subscribed, but you visit me often. Today's story is going to be actually 3 stories of attempted unaliving. 2 of them plots for hire, and the other just a plot. So we will look at each one of these stories individually, and let's get into it. For this first story, I'd like to introduce you to the Gesson family. You know, they're in this picture, they're all smiles, and you probably look at it and say, what on earth could be going on with them? Well, I'm going to tell you. This is Alan Gesson and his wife, Priscilla, whose last name I am not going to try to pronounce. Now, Alan was, or is, well, I guess is the right word, an attorney, and his wife, Priscilla, is a model from Zimbabwe, which is why I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the last name. The Gesson family eventually started having problems, and they decided to get a divorce. And as in many cases of divorce, when there's children involved, there was a custody battle. He wanted full custody, and Priscilla wanted full custody of the children. Well, Mr. Gesson, he just did not want to let his children go. So he devised a plan to have his wife deported from the country. And once that scheme was underway, he decided at the last minute that he didn't want to pay that because the fee was going to be $100,000. Alan Gesson came up with a new plan. He decided he would hire a hitman, and the fee for this hitman was going to be $50,000. Well, he met with the hitman because he felt like, in his words, it was cheaper to get rid of her. Those are his words, not mine. He met with this hitman, but the hitman jacked the price up to from $50,000. He just jacked it up, and he didn't want to pay those jacked up fees, so he left that plan alone for a minute. He eventually looked into a hitman again and found someone. Well, what he didn't know at the time, that the person that he was meeting with as the hitman was an undercover FBI agent. So this FBI agent made plans and arrangements with Mr. Gesson. He let the hitman know all of her whereabouts, her schedule, her lifestyle, her habits. He just gave the 411 to this hitman, which was, remember, an undercover FBI agent. And once the plan was all ironed out, Mr. Gesson wired $23,000 to the undercover FBI officer's bank account. I guess it's probably something that, was set up by the FBI. Set up. It was somewhere. So he sends him this money so that the plan could just go in motion, and he could took place unalive in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, Alan Gesson, he is apparently a very smart man, because in addition to wiring the money and all of those things, he had drawn up like a fake contract that said he was receiving consultant fees from this undercover agent so that there would be an explanation to where the money was going. So he had this plan. He was going to take this money. He did up this fake contract and, for everybody to sign so it could look like he's paying this man to be a consultant when he's actually paying him for a hit. Needless to say, that plan didn't work because he was dealing with the FBI. So back in July of 2022, Mr. Alan Gesson was arrested and indicted. He was charged with 1 count of unaliving for hire, and he has been convicted by a jury. He was given 120 months in prison, and that's going to be followed up by 3 years of supervised release. So I guess he'll have to do, it didn't say whether it was going to be probation or parole, but once he gets out after his 10 years are up, he's still going to be on paper for another 3 years. The thing about Mr. Gesson is it's bad enough that he was going through all of these things to get rid of his wife in order to keep his children. He has just, when he met the new hitman, the second hitman, he told him all of his problems. He told him about how he was going to have her deported and it cost too much. He also told that undercover agent how he had already hired a hitman before him, but he jacked up the price at the last minute. He was telling him all the details of their pretty much crumbling co-parent relationship. I mean, I just thought that, and I would never, try to unalive anybody for hire or just in general. I mean, it's crazy. There are better ways to work out your problems. But, I just don't think you should establish a relationship with the hitman, telling him all his problems and how how everything was just deteriorating. You just don't tell a hitman that. And I definitely wouldn't have told him that, yeah, I hired somebody before you, but they jacked the price up and I didn't want to pay. I mean, he convicted his own self as far as I'm concerned, but he sounds like a very dangerous man. And he needs to take those 10 years out and sit and think about what he's done. I mean, you're talking about taking away the mother of your children by any means necessary. So I think that I personally think he should have just got longer. And now not only is he not going to see his children for 10 years, probably until they're of adult age, there will probably be some sort of a restraining order put in place. So I just don't know what this man was thinking. Alan Gesson's wife was interviewed by the Atlanta Black Star, and she's quoted as saying, "I can't even begin to explain how I felt in that moment." And she's talking about, the moment that she learned of what was her husband had planned. Now, I will tell you, she does have a YouTube channel, and it's either Vintage and Glam or Glam and Vintage. But what I'm going to do is in the description, I'm going to put a link to one of her story times where she is talking about her marriage and things that happened in the marriage and how he was as a husband. So I'm going to have that attached because I can't remember if it's Glam and Vintage or Vintage and Glam. So I'm going to put it in the description so that if you'd like, you can go over there and take a look at it. It was very interesting. And she did a 5-part series. I will tell you that, one of the things that she says about their relationship is that, excuse me, that he was a very abusive man. And there was an incident one time where he hit her so hard she passed out. So that's their story. And, sometimes you just have to realize when to walk away and how to be an adult to work things out, because he's ruined his life, but he's also really ruined his children's lives, not to mention Priscilla's life, because when you are in an abusive relationship, even once you get out, you still carry that with you. And you still also have to deal with the fact that I have children with this man. I love my children. I'm going to raise my children. But I know in my head, it would just be a piece of me who would be concerned in the next 10 years.
And the very worst things that ever happened in our relationship, because they wanted to show and establish that this was his nature. And he definitely did plan to do this, because historically and from everything in our history, he had been pretty cruel. And he had, like, in a lot of his actions, he had been very brutal. He had been very callous with my life, with our children's lives, and he had pretty much only done things that had benefited him. There was never a point at which any of his actions reflected any kind of care or thoughts about my well-being or our children's well-being. It was just always focused on what he wanted. So I went through that. It was tough. There were moments where I actually, got teary, because it was tough talking about it. And it was tough, being asked so directly. And what was worse was that he was in the room as well, and he was sitting there. I didn't actually honestly look at him. I couldn't. There was a part of me that couldn't. Keep in mind, I haven't seen him for almost a year. He was taken on July 28th last year.
Now we're going to move on to our next story. This story right here involves the man in the middle. His name is Dharmesh Patel. And, he looks like a little family man. He's a doctor, a wife, 2 children. And I know you're probably looking at this and saying, well, what on earth could he have done? I mean, he's a doctor, he's married, he has children. I mean, he couldn't have possibly done anything. Well, let me tell you. About 16 months ago, Mr. Patel was accused of driving his family's Tesla off of a 250-foot cliff at Devil's Slide on January the 2nd. And he's been charged with 3 counts of attempted unaliving. As you can see in the picture, this is what the vehicle looked like after it went off the cliff. But his wife, instead of having him be charged with the attempted unaliving, 3 counts, which is her and the 2 children, she's requesting something else. The wife, whose name is Neha Patel, made the following statement to a judge via Zoom. She stated, "I don't want to see Dharmesh prosecuted with any of his charges. I'm pleading with the court to grant him his mental health diversion. Seeing my kids in constant pain is one of the hardest things I've had to endure. Once I tuck my children into bed at night, I am reminded of my own solitude. I really miss my best friend. I really miss my partner in my life." The district attorney, Steve Wagstaff, said that 2 doctors had testified that Dharmesh was suffering a psychotic break at the time of the crash, leading him to believe his 2 children may be sex trafficked. Now, these children were ages, it was a little girl, she was 7 at the time, and the little boy, he was 4 at the time. Now, in addition to that, the doctors for the defense stated that he was suffering from He was suffering from major depression disorder. I am not exactly sure how or why he thought or was going through something mental that led to him to believe that his children were going to be trafficked. But, well, let me stick to the story. When Dharmesh was, arrested and arraigned and all of that, he pled not guilty to his charges, and he, at that time, was seeking a health diversion. The health diversion would have released him from jail and put him on a 2-year treatment plan. That's if, this thing is granted. Judge Susan Jabrowski will determine if Dharmesh poses a public safety threat and if mental health contributed to his decision to drive off that 250-foot cliff. Now, this hearing went on for 2 days, and his wife appeared again for about 10 minutes describing how wonderful her husband was, how he was a productive member of society, and how they were about to celebrate 16 years of marriage at the time. In addition to talking about how much of a wonderful father Dharmesh was, she also spoke about how her children, especially her son, often cries and wants to know when daddy is coming home. Her last statement made was, "We need him in our lives, and it has been over a year and a half since my children and I have seen or spoken to Dharmesh." She said that we are not a family without him. The mental health treatment will not only restore him back to himself, but restore him back to our family. I'm going to describe to you what one of the witnesses saw the day of the crash, which was January the 2nd, 2023. The witness stated that the electric vehicle dropped some 300 feet before crash landing just feet from the waves of the Pacific Ocean. The witness further went on to say, "I saw it disappear in midair going down." When rescue arrived, which consisted of the police, medics, and firefighters, when they arrived, they looked and saw a crashed and mangled vehicle, and they thought for sure that whoever was in there did not survive. They immediately thought that this was going to be a recovery mission and not a rescue mission. However, it turned out that everyone in the car was alive. Now, Dharmesh and his wife got the brunt of the crash, and they were badly injured, but the two children who were in their seatbelts in the back seat only had minor bruising. It took 2 sets of rescuers to get them out of the vehicle because of the damage and all of the things that they had to do to get them out. But, nevertheless, they were all rescued and treated, and they're all still here today. One of the rescuers made a quote and said, "The fact that all survived was nothing short of miraculous."
The man accused of intentionally driving his family off a California cliff on Monday is reportedly a radiologist, and the passengers in the crashed vehicle were his wife and 2 children. The U.S. News and World Report website states that Dharmesh Patel received his medical degree from Wayne State University School of Medicine and has been in practice for over 11 years. He's reportedly affiliated with Providence Holy Cross Medical Center. Per an arrest report by the California Highway Patrol, Patel was arrested at Stanford Hospital on charges of attempted murder and child abuse. He was trapped inside his vehicle with his 41-year-old wife, as well as his 7-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son, before they were saved in a dramatic multi-agency rescue. An officer with CHP who had assisted with the rescue told people that he hadn't seen a crash or a recovery quite like that before, adding, "It's unusual for that many people to be in the car and to have them all survive over a 300-foot cliff." The cliff, just 15 miles south of San Francisco, is known as the Devil's Slide. It has been the site of a number of fatalities over the years. Throughout their investigation, officials developed probable cause to believe that the incident was an intentional act. The CHP has not specified what led them to that conclusion. After being treated at the hospital and discharged, Patel will be booked at San Mateo County Jail. The current health status of his wife and children is not clear. On Tuesday, the hospital where Patel works released a statement saying that it is deeply saddened to learn of a traffic incident involving one of their physicians and his family. They added that they are extremely grateful there were no serious injuries.
I'm not exactly sure what to think of this or how to think of it. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it just kind of, it's just nagging at me that, okay, they're saying he had a mental break, but why did he have a mental break? It bothers me that he was thinking that his children were being trafficked. Where did that come from? Why did he think that? Now, and I'm not even going to, I'm not going to try to even guess what could mentally be wrong with him, but this is a puzzle to me that I can't make the pieces fit. Something just doesn't seem right in all of this with what he did. And I would want my loved one to get help, but at the same time, I can't say that I would want them. I mean, the man tried to unalive you himself and the children. And that's always, to me, a touchy situation. So I don't know. I don't know what kind of opinion I have of this, but let me know what yours is down in the comments. We're going to talk about a convicted rapist, his girlfriend, and another underage unnamed accomplice. So there's a guy by the name of Alexander Keyes. He is 21 years old, and he's over there in Ontario County Jail. I believe that is maybe in New York. But anyway, he's sitting there awaiting his sentencing for a rape charge. Now, he was already found guilty, so he's just sitting there waiting to be sentenced. And he, for whatever reason, thought it might be a good idea to enlist his 22-year-old girlfriend, Lydia Gator, in an unaliving for hire plot, which apparently didn't work because on April the 25th, 2024, Mr. Keyes and his girlfriend and an underage unnamed individual were arrested for this failed plot. Now, this plot was for the unaliving for hire on 3 people who were involved in his rape conviction. I'm not sure what that would have gotten him because he was already found guilty. So I don't know, where he was going with that. But according to the New York State Police, Alexander Keyes, he tried to have the prosecutor, the judge who presided over his trial, along with a couple of witnesses in the trial, he wanted to get rid of them. Alexander and Lydia masterminded, if you want to call it that, the plot, and they used nearly $1,750 worth of Xanax as a down payment. Yes, you heard that correctly. $1,750 worth of Xanax. I don't know how many pills that is. Gosh, I should have done the calculations. But anyway, so that was going to be the payment. Now, on April the 21st, 2024, his girlfriend agreed to meet an individual in a parking lot in the town of Victor to consummate and negotiate the deal for the murder for hire plot. Now, I take what you want from that consummate because I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. I don't know if it was going to be some Xanax and a good time. I just don't know. But, I'm just reporting what. Unbeknownst to Lydia, the person that she was meeting with wasn't actually a hitman. It was an undercover officer. And so what she did was she conducted her narcotics transaction with the undercover officer in lieu of paying money for the unaliving of the judge. This unsuccessful unaliving for hire plot, of course, was a failed attempt, and both Alexander Kais and Lydia Gator have been charged with attempted unaliving, conspiracy, and criminal sale of controlled substances. And they're both, of course, being held without bail at the present time. Now, in addition to those two, there was an unnamed underage 16-year-old suspect who has also been charged with attempted unaliving and conspiracy and was arraigned in family court. It doesn't say if the minor was released or not, but all three of the suspects are due back in court sometime next week, which is when the DA's office anticipates presenting all of the charges to a grand jury. So I will be looking out for that and will keep you updated on the story.
Now to new information in a suspected murder for hire plot targeting a judge and an assistant DA. Convicted rapist Alexander Kais is accused of plotting to have multiple people who were involved in his rape trial murdered. 13 WAM's Jackie Napier was the first to break this story last night. Today, she spoke with state police who revealed more details about the investigation. Jackie?
Good evening, Stephanie. Ontario County District Attorney James Ritt says Kais and his girlfriend attempted to put a hit on an assistant district attorney, Victoria Porter, and the Honorable Brian Dennis, an Ontario County court judge. A jury convicted Alexander Kais of rape and other charges on March 15th after prosecutors say he held a woman captive for 2 days back in 2022, where he sexually assaulted, injured, and threatened her. Now, the 21-year-old and his girlfriend, 22-year-old Lydia Gator, are accused of trying to have 3 people involved in that rape trial murdered.
Kais and Gator conspired to hire a third party to murder the Ontario County Court Judge and Ontario County Assistant District Attorney, who was presiding over Kais's criminal case for which he was being held on.
The witness was redacted. She was a witness, obviously, in the trial as it related to Mr. Kais and led to his conviction.
Prosecutors say on April 21st, Gator agreed to meet an individual in a Victor parking lot to plan a hit on Judge Dennis with the alleged intention of shooting and killing him.
Unbeknownst to her, the person she was meeting was an undercover officer and not a person hired somebody else to kill him. Gator conducted a narcotics transaction with the undercover officer in lieu of money to murder the judge. Gator used approximately $1,750 worth of Xanax as payment for the killing.
District Attorney James Ritt says a 16-year-old was also charged with attempted murder and conspiracy. Prosecutor Kelly Wolford says there are some uncharged individuals in the community, and this continues to be an ongoing investigation. Kais, Gator, and the unnamed 16-year-old are all in custody. Kais and Gator will be in court next week, after which the district attorney's office anticipates presenting those charges to a grand jury. Steph?
Once again, I am Legacy Moon. If you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure you're on that home screen. Tap the subscribe button, then make sure you hit that notification bell so that you will be informed every time I post a new video. And as I always ask, please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up so that I can be counted in the rhythm of ALG.